When the Black Lives Matter riots were happening, even through all of the absolutely mindless, senseless destruction, I tried my best to steelman their perspective. I do agree that Black Lives Matter. I think we are long past overdue for a conversation about how exactly this country has screwed over black people in every possible way, shape, and form, particularly as it relates to the war on drugs, which is the reason Breonna Taylor is dead, and it's the reason that we arbitrarily lock up so many young black men and then blame the black community for having such high rates of fatherlessness. At the time, I knew for a fact that police violence against black men was a statistically irrelevant issue facing the black community, certainly in comparison to the myriad other issues they face. I knew that the death of George Floyd was an isolated incident and that the overwhelming majority of police were decent people and the overwhelming majority of police interactions were fine. But an isolated incident can serve as a catalyst for invoking systemic change. The conversation around policing needed to be had. Among the many pervasive and stupid ideas we have in our culture is the idea that being a police officer automatically makes you a hero. First off, being a police officer is not even in the list of top 15 dangerous jobs, so the idea that police officers put themselves in harm's way more than other occupations is just not true. Do you think that police unions have the public's best interest in mind or its members? Do you think that the over-policing of petty drug crimes is a good thing? Whether or not the death of George Floyd represented a problem in and of itself, which, by the way, if you want to know if it did, you can watch this video, what could not be disputed is that it was the symbolic tip of the iceberg, underneath which was a myriad of genuine systemic issues.
One of the things I was interested in talking to you about, you've written a fair bit about racial differences in incarceration in the United States. That the fact of those differential incarceration rates not only has a variety of negative, medium, and long-term consequences for everyone, but that it does point to a kind of systemic problem that's fundamentally discriminatory.
But in any case, I lamented the racial disparity in incarceration. I thought it was bad for our society, even if it reflected mainly disparity in criminal offending, because of course criminal offending doesn't fall from the sky either. It's a consequence of social structure and social organization to some degree, as well as the personality and moral characteristics of different individuals in society. I was concerned about mass incarceration primarily because I thought it made solving the American dilemma all that much more difficult to accomplish.
And this lens of empathy towards a side that I disagree with is the exact same lens that I try to adopt when I see a story about illegal immigrants beating up cops in New York.
All 5 were released without bail, even though they are charged with a felony.
Or that an illegal immigrant stabbed a high school cheerleader to death less than a month ago and I never heard anything about it. We could say to focus on these isolated incidents is to lie and to demonize an entire group of people based on a cherry-picked example. And yes, if you say all illegal immigrants are dangerous killers, or if you say all cops are bastards, then yeah, you are lying and demonizing people by telling only one side of the story. But here's the thing. In the case of BLM, there was so much latent negative psychological energy that resulted from genuine systemic issues that even though the death of George Floyd did not prove anything about the statistical danger that black people face from the police, you would be a fool not to recognize how that incident served as a genuine psychological catalyst for energizing all that collective negative emotion. A symbolic lit match being thrown in a drum of gasoline. This is exactly how I see the conservative response towards illegal immigration. There is a ton of negative psychological energy that needs to be addressed with care so it doesn't explode into worse violence than we've already seen from people. And one way to do that is to make the bare minimum acknowledgement that, yeah, this type of shit is up. And no matter who you are, you have every right to be upset about this. And what's more, you have every right to demand that a conversation be held about the systemic failures that led up to these isolated incidents. Everyone agrees our immigration system is broken, and we should fix it because immigration is a good thing. And until we fix it, we should aggressively secure the border so this type of stuff doesn't happen and the country doesn't burn down because one half of the country refused to recognize the valid grievances that the other half of the country has.
Galewood residents have filed a temporary restraining order to stop the Amundsen Park field house from being transformed into housing for asylum seekers.
If you're an independent candidate, Green Party candidate, Republican candidate, now is your time in this city. Yes. Because the black people in the city of Chicago are tired of being disrespected by the Democratic Party. Yes. And if you are going to continue to disrespect us, we're going to turn our backs on you the way that you are turning your back on us.
To pretend there are no negative systemic consequences from illegal immigration is as foolish as pretending there are no systemic negative issues with our policing system. Instead of complaining that either side cherry picks isolated incidents to serve their propagandistic narrative, recognize that the reason they do this is to advance the conversation, however imperfectly, about the very real systemic issues that the cherry-picked incidents symbolize. If you want to stop the far left from burning our country down, then you have to acknowledge the valid grievances underneath the cherry-picked example of a police shooting at unarmed black men. And if you want to stop the conservatives from burning our country down, you have to recognize the valid systemic issues that illegal immigration causes that are represented by the cherry-picked example of an illegal immigrant committing a terrible crime. It's called common sense, or, as I call it, enlightened centrism. So with that, good luck and Godspeed.